Quilt making is an art that spans multiple centuries and cultures. Before you begin this project, I encourage you to take plenty of time to explore the art of Faith Ringgold. As an author and artist, she's most renowned for her painted story quilts, combining quilt making, painting, and storytelling. To learn more about Faith, there are a number of videos available at Blick.com, including The Last Story Quilt and I Can Fly. I would also recommend a visit to her website at faithringgold.com. Now, everyone has stories to tell from their own lives, but you can also choose to illustrate a story that you've read or a story you've heard from a family member. Select a scene from that story that is meaningful to you. Our story quilt today will begin with a piece of muslin. It's an inexpensive fabric with a very warm, neutral color. It's great for painting. You're going to need at least a letter size for a small quilt, and you can certainly make it larger if you'd like. You'll also need some scrap pieces for the border that's going to go around it. Now, the paint may bleed through the muslin, so I'm going to protect my work area with, first of all, a piece of cardboard, and secondly, a stack of paper towels directly beneath it. To apply the color, I'm going to show you a couple of different paint options today. We want to use a paint that's going to remain soft and flexible on the fabric, not get all hard and stiff. First of all, I have some new water-soluble wax pastels from Reeves. I can use these in a number of different ways to do the details in my painting. First of all, I can draw directly onto the muslin like so, as if I were using a crayon or a regular pastel. I can also dip the pastel tip in some water and then apply it to the muslin, and you can see that intensifies the color and gives you a very different look. Another way to use it would be to take a brush and wet the fabric first with the paintbrush, then apply the color directly into the wet area. This just makes it bleed in very nicely. You can also use the brush to come back in and blend the colors together. These versatile pastels are especially good for the small areas and the details of the painting, but for the larger areas you might want to use more of a paint, and I'm going to use liquid watercolor today. Blick liquid watercolors are very intense and very fluid. You can water them down a little bit if you'd like, but I love to use them straight because of the intense color. Once again, you can wet the fabric and paint wet into wet, or just use it directly as is. Okay, now younger ages may want to simply paint a background, while the older students could be challenged to paint shapes and pieces of the story, cut them out and assemble them together. While your painting dries, then you can set it aside and start on the swatches. I have a number of swatches here. It's best to paint them larger and cut them down later, just a little easier to paint. Use patterns and colors that are meaningful and help to describe the story that you're going to be painting. Some of these are simple, some are a little bit detailed. Sometimes the muslin wants to curl while you paint it. Don't worry about that. You can flatten it later as you glue it. You can also trim away any of the frays if you don't like those. All right, now I do have a finished story illustration right here. This has already been glued down onto a piece of felt. Now the felt keeps it nice and flexible, so it's like a fabric quilt, even when it's glued down. This has been glued in place with some tacky glue, a nice fabric glue that's going to hold it down well. It's a lovely little illustration of a family vacation at the seashore. What a nice story. Now it's time to apply the border to this piece. I've cut down some of my painted swatches into squares and rectangles, and before I glue them in place, I might want to set them where I want them first so that I can change my mind if I want to easily. I like to leave a little bit of black space in between the swatches just to make them stand out a little bit more. Once I've decided where they go, then I come back in with another little bit of the fabric glue. This can also be brushed on, and glue them in place like so. Allow it to dry. And I have a finished piece over here to show you. Very bright and colorful, isn't it? Now you could call this complete, or you can embellish it by stitching with some embroidery floss, adding some beads, buttons, ribbons, string, or other materials. For example, in this piece over here, the key characters and the horses have been defined with a running stitch around them. There's also been some beads added for a little bit of detail. And in this example back here on the wall, beads have been glued to the surface as an embellishment and colorful stitches have been added around the border. We've also made loops in the felt itself so that we can display this on a rod as a banner. This amazing piece illustrates a Shoshone tribal legend. So you can see how this project can generate all sorts of stories. And making a story quilt is a chapter in itself. Are you ready to tell yours? We have a PDF with full printable instructions and a materials list posted at dickblick.com/lesson plans. The national standards for visual arts education are listed there as well for all grade levels. Thank you so much for joining us.